Welcome back. Well, today we have a topic that's very interesting. The Montana case. If you've been following the Montana case, it's been going on for some time. I've been following it for about a year on my channel, and we're going to get right into it because it's very interesting. There's a very interesting turn here, and it leads to, of course, the shredding of records. And so I'm just going to get right into it. What do we have here? We'll move over to another screen here. Okay, so thanks to watching Watchtower, they brought this news forth. And these are the... I'm going to clip all of this stuff so you guys can see it for yourselves. This is not fake news at all. This has just been released April 3rd. It's April 4th today. So this is brand new news, and just going to move my mode there. Yes, so it's brand new news. So this is the first one here. It's District Court, United States. It's the motion for Billings Division, Montana. Billings is a city there. Now, this is the plaintiff, Tracy K. Kurt and Camellia Mapley. And these are CSA cases. Watchtower's been fighting tooth and nail. Remember, folks, this is the case at Brumley. Remember Brumley, Watchtower's lawyer? Yeah, he got sanctioned $153,000 fined for lying and misleading the court on this case. So we're going to see why, what all the lying is about, why Watchtower's been lying. Now, This should really wake a lot of people up, I think. Like, I couldn't watch this and stay in the organization. This is amazing what's going on. So here it is. The plaintiff, Tracy, these two girls, they're molested in the organization. And so they're trying to go to court with us. You can't take Watchtower to court because they lie through their teeth. Motion after motion, they hide behind that clergy penitent privilege. They're trying to. So this is regarding these records. So the jury shall be instructed that Watchtower Legal Department was under obligation to maintain and preserve documents pertaining to the sexual abuse, and so on and so forth. And the jury shall be instructed that it may infer that the destroyed documents would have been unfavorable. So that's what's happening here. The jury's going to look at this whole case and say, okay, all those records don't exist now. We're going to infer that Watchtower's guilty. So this is going to cost Watchtower. This goes public once this is all complete. And the jury's looking at this. Now all the evidence is pointing at the Watchtower for destroying records, and there's probably going to be fines and sanctions and a whole pile of stuff from this. So Watchtower case is, of course, is doing a motion to object to it all. So this is a 25-page document here. I'm going to go through most of it briefly, but it'll all be pinned. And let's just look at it. Here's the table. This is court documents. This is what the whole world sees, folks. The whole world, judges all over the world. These are documents from the government. Everyone will use them as case studies from now on in. That's what's interesting about this stuff. Yes, that's what's interesting, because the case studies will make future law easier when they go against Watchtower. And if you think of Watchtower, what Watchtower's fighting for, they don't want to be responsible for these payouts, right? And I think this is going to be a very huge payout because they've been caught lying, tampering with evidence, withholding evidence, and so on and so forth. We're going to see it all here. Here it is. This is a factual background. Correspondence from local congregations regarding child sex abuse. I'm going to breeze through this, folks. And again, you guys can open up the comments from the description and look at it yourself if you want to really study it. Now, here's number 3 here. Watchtower is unable to produce the documents that form the factual basis. for the memorandums. And they acknowledged that they could have been discarded. So they're right out the gate. At least one of the memorandums include references to documents have not been produced and have therefore been destroyed. Watchtower attempts to keep the memorandums a secret. Beginning in 2011, this is how far this case goes back, Watchtower Legal Department received repeated threats of litigation about child sex abuse in Hain, Montana. Law, argument, Watchtower has created a situation where the preservation of critical evidence of the child sex abuse at the issue in this case is in doubt. And Watchtower must be accountable for the missing documents. Watchtower's obligation to preserve at the time of evidence was destroyed, and evidence destroyed with culpable state of mind. You get that, folks? They're destroying evidence not accidentally. And I'm going to show you a video. Hang in there. We're going to breeze through this 25 pages. And I'm going to show you a video that's very interesting. And it's Watchtower instructing their people to destroy records. So there's sanctions here. So the authorities, it has everything here. Okay, so introduction. The defendant, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, Watchtower we're going to call them, has not produced certain documents that were used by the Service Department to create internal memorandums of records about CSA. We're going to abbreviate child sex abuse. We're going to call it CSA as the issue in this case. At one point, Watchtower said these documents were subjected to litigation hold and should be in the sole possessions of its legal department. At another point in time, Watchtower said the documents were subject to litigation hold and were in possession of the legal department. But the Service Department had a redundant copy of some of the records until 2019. Watchtower also acknowledges that the documents could have been discarded once the memorandums were completed. Could have, should have. The documents used by the Service Department to create memorandums of records are critical for plaintiffs to see because they contain information regarding the sexual abuse at issue in this case, including what the defendants knew and when they knew it. Yet Watchtower is unable to provide a consistent, straightword answer as to the whereabouts of the documents. Watchtower internally inconsistent representations about the documents in conjunction with the acknowledgement that the documents were subject to a litigation hold, but may have been destroyed, and create significant unanswered questions about what the Watchtower did with the documents. Ultimately, Watchtower should be ordered to produce the documents or be subject to sanctions. It's going to cost them money for destroying them. You see, folks, that's obstruction of justice. That's hiding the truth. There's laws, many laws in the Bible about that. Without getting into the Bible too hard here, what's the 7 most detestable things to God? This is amongst it. Lying, covering up the truth, twisting things. Okay. Let's carry on. Factual background. Correspondence from the local congregation regarding CSA includes from the Hain congregation was subject to a legal hold. So here they are, legal holds. See, they've had legal holds all over the place. Later in 2010, the litigation holds, Watchtower's legal department took possession of documents, and those documents remained in possession of Watchtower's legal department. So there were documents, folks. And then they all of a sudden disappeared. The Service Department used correspondence from the congregation to create summaries. Watchtower is unable to produce the documents that formed the factual basis for these memorandums and acknowledges they could have been discarded. And Watchtower is unable to answer this interrogatory and subparts because it has no way of knowing whether any of the documents ever existed. And when the memorandums of records were created, the elders in the Service Department had the liberty to rely on any then existing religious documents and had the option to call the elders for details contained in the memorandums. and Watchtower cannot reverse engineer how the service department elder created the memorandums of records, and therefore would only be guessing what specific records and or documents formed the factual basis for these memorandums. And every existing document that could have formed the basis for the memorandums has either been produced or identified in privilege log. And if there are any records that formed the factual basis for this memorandum record, well, they were created and such documents were discarded once they were completed. So, thus attempting to learn as much as possible about the documents, the plaintiff has learned two things. Number one, Watchtower cannot produce any still existing correspondence. And number two, Watchtower acknowledges that the documents have been discarded once the memorandums were completed. 4. At least one memorandum includes reference to documents that have not been produced and have therefore been destroyed. One of the memorandums include... So one of the memorandums, what is it, has been destroyed. It includes internal references to documents that Watchtower has not produced in discovery. So I'm just going to flick down here. Number 5, Watchtower attempted to keep these memorandums secret. 6, beginning in 2011, Watchtower's legal department received repeated threats of litigation about CSA. And then there's the law. When sitting in diversity jurisdiction, this court applies federal law to evaluate whether a party has spoliated. So the word spoliated means destroying evidence. So they spoliated shredded records. As this court recently noted, there are two sources of authority under which a district court can sanction a party who has despoiled evidence: the inherent power of federal courts to levy sanctions in response to abusive litigation. And when evaluating whether a party has spoliated evidence, destroyed evidence, as opposed to the private cause action, they refer to the federal law. Okay, where else are we on here? Argument. Watchtower has created a situation where the preservation of critical evidence of CSA at issue is in doubt. So Watchtower, they've mixed this all up and confused it all to make everything doubtful. And this is how they're trying to fight law. They've already got fined for this, hiding evidence. This is how deceitful the Watchtower is, folks. This is how deceitful the governing body is. They direct this. So it's evident to us that this is not an organization from God. This is crystal clear. This is the machinations of the devil at work. I'm speaking like a JW because I am. I came out. And that's how I read the Bible. What they're calling out is who they are. That's how serious this is. It's a cult, and it's hiding evidence, and it'll go to every extreme to hide evidence regarding CSA. Because if they're culpable, and they are culpable all over Earth, you look at 1,000 cases for the Australian Commission, just in that one country. Well, JW orgs in 239 lands they brag about. They brag that they have 8.5 million followers. So over the years, how many cases have there been? Is there really? There's tens of thousands upon thousands. And they start coming out and paying out settlements of 300,000 to 400,000. And this seems to be the norm. Watchtower has to shut their lights off really quick. And when it can be proved that Watchtower is now hiding evidence, they've shredded evidence, and they're not to be trusted because they're deceitful, they're liars, and this is how the courts are looking at this organization, not to be trusted. They've lost all credibility. And you want to talk about muddying a name? Jehovah? Muddy, that is the muddiest name in the world today, as far as religions go. And I wonder how he feels about this organization muddying that name. I wouldn't think it's a good thing. So the Watchtower has created a situation where critical evidence it's doubtful. So Watchtower's shifting representations and explanations about the status of the correspondence, the communications used to create the memorandums are unsustainable. So first, Watchtower swore under oath that such documents used to create the memorandums had either been produced, identified in privilege log, or discarded. And then Watchtower admits that it does not know which documents were used as a basis to create the memorandums. And then next, Watchtower states that the documents used to create the memorandums were subject to legal hold and in the exclusive possession of the legal department. Then the Watchtower states that the documents were subject to a legal hold and the service department also had copies. Watchtower seems to be making it up as it goes along. Folks, this isn't me talking. This is a legal document from the courts. And this is going all the judges all around the world. Anybody that's fighting Watchtower, they're going to read this. They're going to be on this. Here's what it says. Watchtower seems to be making it up as it goes along. This is how the world's looking at Watchtower. They're liars. And its statements have created far more questions than the documents than answers. And for instance, why would such documents subject to a legal hold be given to the service department to create summary memorandums in the first place? Right? Good question. And if they were, why would the service department be permitted to discard them after the memorandums were completed? Why? And finally, why did the Watchtower try to keep the very existence of these memorandums a secret? Very good question, Watchtower. Nothing that the Watchtower represents about the memorandums makes any sense. Watchtower's contrary and puzzling representations make it impossible to truly know what happened to the critical documents used to create the memorandums. And at the same time, it is clear the documents contained important, discoverable information. Ultimately, it must be Watchtower and not plaintiffs that bear the burden of the missing documents. Number 2, Watchtower must be accountable for the missing documents. As set forth below, the Watchtower Legal Department's failure to preserve evidence in its possession under a litigation hold. Folks, this is just not evidence. This is evidence that they held as this court went on for many years. Evidence in the possession under a litigation hold constitutes spoliation. Spoliation. That means destroying this legal evidence purposefully. That's what Watchtower is doing. We're going to look at a video. Watchtower's obligation to preserve at the time evidence was destroyed. Trial courts in this circuit generally agree the duty to preserve a relevant evidence before litigation commences is triggered as soon as the potential claim is identified. So, you see, once this charge is made, all that evidence has to be held. That's all critical. And here, Watchtower, after this charge was made, they went ahead and destroyed evidence. This is the seriousness of this, folks. Very serious what's coming out in court here. So here, Watchtower acknowledges that of 2013, it was under legal duty to preserve all records, communications, and reports between 1979 and 2013 relating to child sex abuse, including CSA occurring at the Hain congregation, and further acknowledges that the duty to maintain those documents continues until today. So they acknowledge that. And therefore, the record establishes that as of 2013, Watchtower had a continuing obligation to preserve all correspondence of the reports of the CSA received from the Hain congregation between 1979 and 2013. And the last known time that the documents existed were 2016, 2017, and 2019, and when they were used to create the memorandums. And now in 2024, Watchtower is unable to produce the documents and acknowledges that they may have been discarded after these memorandums were completed. And thus the record establishes that Watchtower is under a duty to preserve the documents at the time they disappeared. So while the 2013 legal hold is certainly sufficient to establish a duty to preserve these documents, Watchtower is also on notice of threatened litigation over CSA of Hain, Maple, Sir, and Svenson. So there's other cases coming up, folks, is what this is looking like. And Watchtower's privilege log establishes that when the Service Department created the memorandums, it had been receiving specific and consistent threats of litigation regarding all three men going back to 2011, as recent as 2018 and 2019. So this is not that old, this stuff that they're covering up. And this is further evidence that Watchtower was under the obligation to preserve these documents when they went missing. So we have, this is serious, evidence destroyed with a culpable state of mind. No one's crazy here. Watchtower has very high-paid lawyers, and they're going to great extremes to cover and to get rid of evidence. So that's what it says here. Evidence destroyed with a culpable state of mind. That's intent, folks. That's intent to cover up crimes. That's serious. Evidence that is destroyed knowingly, even if without intent to breach a duty to preserve it or neglect. How do you say that? If you neglect or responsible, satisfies the state of mind element of spoliation. I shouldn't have even read that. But anyways, they define it, this, that they had the state of mind, the proper state of mind. So they did this on purpose. Here, it spells it out here. Watchtower spoliation was willful because it had notice that the correspondence which were used to create these memorandums were relevant to litigation. There it is in one sentence, folks. First, the documents were under litigation hold and they were relevant. And additionally, the legal department had been receiving consistent threats of litigation surrounding these people. And Watchtower had ample reason to know any of the correspondence it gave to the Service Department to create these memorandums was relevant to litigation. So the Watchtower is being brought to task here. Evidence was relevant to claim the defense, such that the reasonable trier of the fact could find that it would support the claims or defenses. This goes on and on and on. Sanctions. A trial court is discretion regarding the form of spoliation. Sanctions is broad, and sanctions can range from the minor, such as awarding of attorney fees, to more serious, such as dismissing claims and instructing the jury that it may draw an adverse inference. So this is what's happening. They're making a motion to just assume that Watchtower is guilty to the 10th degree, because they've on purpose shredded these records, destroyed these records. Okay, let's see how much. I think we're right at the bottom. Conclusion: Watchtower's story about the documents that the Service Department used to create memorandums is ever-changing and inconsistent in significant respects. Watchtower is unable to produce or identify these documents. It acknowledges that they could have been discarded. Watchtower and its legal service departments have created an untenable situation whereby it is unable to assure plaintiffs, the court, that the critical evidence in its possession had been produced. It's just crazy. The jury shall be instructed that, number one, the Watchtower Legal Department was under an obligation to maintain and preserve documents pertaining to the sex abuse at the time of this case, used by the Service Department to create the memorandums about the victims. And number two, that those documents were destroyed after these memorandums were created. And the jury shall be instructed that it may infer the destroyed documents would have been unfavorable to the Watchtower. So that's it in a nutshell there, folks. And that's dated the 3rd of April. So just been filed, certificate of compliance. And yeah, that's about it, I guess. Okay, so we're going to move on. That gives you firsthand, kind of going through it, what Watchtower's up to and the great extremes these guys go to in courts. It's very hard to sue them. We have to congratulate the victims that are doing it, the plaintiffs, for carrying this out and going through all of this. Because someone has to do it. And once case law is set, once Watchtower is proven that this is case law, that they just shredded all the records. So any of the child abuse cases that come to court, there's no records, they're just going to assume Watchtower is guilty. This sets a precedent, folks. It's the way I see it. Now, let's take a look at this. This is a video. I'm going to turn this on. And this isn't something that we've done. It's a 3-minute video. It's done by Philadelphia Inquiry, July 8, 2018. It's actually old news, but for a lot of you, it's new news. And this is pertaining to all these records disappearing. This comes down from the governing body. The governing body has to take full culpability for what's going on here. Full culpability. So here it is, folks. I'll run it through. It's about a 3-minute video.
We've talked about what a record is. The question is, why has this come up? Why is it that we have records management now? We've been functioning as an organization for years. Well, we know that the scene of this world is changing, and we know Satan's coming after us. And he's going to go for us legally. We can see by the way things are shaping up. So the organization has said, we've run into difficulties in the past because of the records we have. You get the questions, you go through, you create a draft, and you think it looks really good, you pass it by, or someone in your department passes it by you as the overseer, and you look at it and say, no, change this, change that. Well, you do a few drafts, and if you're like Justin and I, that goes around quite a few times. We look at all those that were not approved, all these drafts, and we get rid of all drafts. And the reason is because there's many comments that are sometimes made on drafts. Those are the ones that get us in trouble. A record can be a film or a video, but I also mentioned handwritten notes. Now, sometimes we think, well, handwritten note, how important can that be? Well, we've found out they're very important. Just it's quite a few years ago now. We used to deal with a company. We bought a particular product from them. We hadn't dealt with them in 20 years. Well, that company got into litigation. So that company, in their records, said they dealt with Watchtower. Now, this was in the United States, so right away they come to Watchtower, which is Bethel. That's how they know us in New York City. So they come here and ask us, do we have anything in our records? Now, if we do, then we're connected to their litigation. That's how it works. But if we don't, then the legal world says, well, we have in no way can prove that you were ever dealing with them. They just say that. So they came to Bethel and they checked all the records and they couldn't find anything, but it was determined it would be appropriate to meet with some of those that were there at the time. They asked a few different ones. No, nobody had any records of it. They asked one brother and he said, oh, yes, I do. And he was in his top drawer, he pulled out, and he had a handwritten note. So that handwritten note tied us back to litigation and cost us a few $100,000. So are handwritten notes just as important? Yes, they are. So we want to be very careful and cautious how we handle our records, even if we think they're insignificant. The difficulty is that it's happened more than once. So that's why we have this systematic program that we're putting into play.
So here we have it, Bartlett or the Watchtower guy here running around giving the seminar, instructing probably a bunch of circuit overseers so that they can go and train all the elders. It's probably how it's done. So my advice to any of you guys out there that are elders that are in this organization, and you know of, maybe you've been part of shredding records, now's the time to get out and step forward. Now's the time to do Jehovah a favor. Help clear his name. Watchtower has muddied it. The Watchtower has gone apostate. And how long's that going to last? So it's up to all of us to do the right thing, make a stand. The next part I'm going to look at is a few scriptures here. And this is really what we see happening here. Just going to shut that off. Now, I'm just going to move myself over on the screen here. These are just a few Bible scriptures. I use them quite a bit, actually, in regards to a lot of Watchtower stuff that they're hiding. But the Bible's full of scriptures. Corinthians talks about it. Therefore, do not pronounce judgment before the time the Lord comes. And what's going to happen then? He will bring to light the things now hidden in darkness, and will disclose the purposes of the heart. So it's almost like that's happening right now, where through these court documents we can see the Watchtower's heart on it and how they're hiding these things in darkness. No one wants to talk about CSA and what's happened in the organization, but all the religions have to deal with it, and they're apologizing and doing payouts, but not JW.org. Not JW.org. And that's the sad thing. And all these scriptures, Mark 4 and 22, for nothing is hidden except to be made manifest, nor is anything secret except to come to light. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. The scriptures go on, talking about it. And then when we think of submission to authorities, this is the book of Romans 13. The whole part of this book of Romans, there's so many scriptures, but it says, let everyone be subject to governing authorities. What does that mean? There's no authority here except from God, and those exist have been instituted by God, and therefore whoever resists them resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. And it says, for the rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. So that's kind of the first few verses of this. It's telling us that these governments are not a terror to bad. They're helping with good, and they enforce laws. They're protecting children. This is what's happening in Norway, all over the earth. Japan, the second generation speaking out, the children, and they were abused. They were forced, like a labor camp, to go door to door. Child abuse, just from that standpoint. And by forcing children to go door to door from infancy, that's not right. Children should be playing, should be growing up, playing with other children, not going door to door out there with strangers. There's all kinds of things out there. Pedophiles within the congregation that are hidden. So anyways, these are things that the world's against. Blood transfusions. For watching your child die in front of you. Stopping that child from living because of your altar, or you're giving your child over to the governing body. It's not really that you believe this. You're led to believe this falsity. But the blood thing, that's serious. Lots of people are dying over this. So this is why the world's against this religion. And we know that especially when it comes to covering up records, shredding records, it's serious obstruction of justice. So we're going to keep you guys posted. This is not over, but this is getting interesting, folks. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribe, help push the channel a little further, and we get to see more people and meet more people. We have a lot of lives throughout the week. So join us on the channel, and we'd like to get to know you. Until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.